Good morning. Hi. I'm Liz. I'm one half of the team at Rising Tide Women. I'm in a different setting today because I have a house full of company, so I'm lurking up in my bedroom to do this video today. Oh, there's Lindsay. I'm going to get her on camera. And also going to be a little more mobile than usual. But hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Um, so for those of you who don't know us, we are the team at Rising Tide Women, and we basically are your go-to girls for supporting families from conception through pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding, postpartum, and beyond.
And
So,
beyond,
and to infinity and beyond.
right?
Um, so that is kind of what we do. We do birth classes, we do doula support, we do lactation support, um, we do what else? Postpartum support. We do. I mean, we really do everything.
We have online support. So we physically, if you want us with you, we serve from the Cape to the South Shore to some areas of Boston, and depending for what service it is.
Yeah.
Uh, but otherwise, if you're not in our area, but you still want to learn with us and be in touch with us and have us as a resource, we have these lifeboat programs, and they support pregnant people on their journey with some birth education and live chats and tons of access to us and all of our resources. So it's really fun to be able to
Yes.
serve so many people.
It really is. It is. And actually, I was this morning, I have to admit, I was really into writing this email for one of our lifeboat groups. And I was like really into it, doing research and creating like a downloadable PDF for them. And then I had this moment where I was like, it's 10 of 9 and I am still on the couch in my pajamas. So just for a little behind the scenes, hi Enza, I still have my pajamas on the bottom. So, you know, I'm just, that's how I'm rolling today.
No, no judgment, and you know that that's how we are. I put
Oh,
this nice live shirt on because I was doing some other things as well. So I want to dive right in
yes.
because um, we have some, just important things
Got a lot
to
to talk about.
out. Yeah. So just for those who are kind of getting into the groove with our Wednesday doula jams, each week we kind of rotate through different aspects of becoming a parent, whether it's your first time or your 10th time. So we talked about pregnancy and basically like the beginning of pregnancy last week, where like you're basically just finding out and what is to happen next. We also write a blog and put the video from each Wednesday into it. So that appears on the following Monday. So you can always kind of catch up, get more information. It's great. Uh, so this week, it's a birth related topic.
Yes.
And Liz and I were talking yesterday, and we are like, well, what are we going to talk about? And something that kind of spoke to me was discussing the fact that doulas are not just for those who want an unmedicated, no pain medication, low intervention birth.
Yeah.
And we communicate with a lot of people who say, oh, wow, it would have been so nice to have a doula. Like, that support sounds so great. I had this kind of experience. But I really thought they were only for those that wanted this all natural
And
birth.
whatever that means.
What does that mean? So there are a couple things we can get into. And I just thought that it was an important topic to discuss.
Yeah.
And, you know, anyone can say, oh, I support any type of birth. But I mean, sometimes there are some biases or, you know, the support people that you want with you need to fully support you and be invested in your emotions and what you want for your body and for your experience. And number one, I want to say that Liz and I fully support and love and work with those that even if they know they want certain medications or an epidural as soon as they can get it, yes, we are there for you no matter what.
Yeah. And actually, I only accept birth clients who have scheduled cesareans, which when I was first having my kids, I was like, why, like, why would you have a doula at a scheduled cesarean birth? And then my first delivery of my own kids was a scheduled cesarean birth, and I had a doula, and she was amazing. It was like this transformative experience. Um, and, it was really amazing. And it really has led me to, that's my jam. That's my specialty. So,
That's your
you know,
doula day.
that's my doula jam. So, also, I mean, my life is just kind of not set up to be on call for all births. Um, but also just I love it. I love being in the OR. I love supporting families, through that time, even though it's sort of an unusual doula niche.
But it is really, really important. You know, so many times I think it's those that are saying they want certain um, you know, pharmaceutical pain relief options right off the bat. They're the ones that really need some good education
Yeah.
and some really good support and to help them deal with a lot of the fears that they have going on. So those are the folks that I'm like, let's get on this right away so that you can start feeling better about what's ahead of you.
Yeah.
And some people, once they've, you know, learned as much as they do over the course of the relationship between the doula and the client, sometimes they go into their labor with one thought in mind, and sometimes like they come out on the other side going, oh my gosh, like I never thought I could do it, but I learned so
Yeah.
much and I feel so much better. And then others are like, nope, this is how I want to have my baby. I want medication. I am okay with that. What
Yeah.
we are able to help do is help teach you about the risks, the benefits, help you feel better about your decision. Some folks say, oh, wow, I didn't know A, B, and C. Now I need to really think about it. And also, one thing that I want to bring up is many people will say to you right off the bat, oh, girl, get the epidural, get the pain meds. You don't need to experience that. You don't need to feel any of that. And that's not really helpful either. If it's your decision and it's coming from your heart because you've
Great.
educated yourself about everything, then fine.
Yeah. Can we just please stop telling women what to do with their bodies? Like, don't, like, because alternatively, you have other people who will say, like, oh, well, you're going to go all natural, right? Again, whatever that means to whoever. But, like, like, can we just maybe just like keep our noses in our own business for a hot minute? Um,
A hot lifetime, like
yeah, like forever, actually.
forever, like
Just stop
eternity.
telling women what to do with their bodies, period.
Yeah, it's just it's not really fair either way because then it gets in your head because then people start doubting themselves like, oh, maybe I should get the medication and not experience. You know, there's a reason that our bodies feel what we feel when we're in labor and getting a human or humans. out of our body, okay? Like we're supposed to, it's not supposed to be a walk in the park. Some people will tell you, oh, I didn't feel anything, or I was able to do it this or that way, which, okay, fine,
Great.
great. You were prepared differently. Um, and others have so much fear that, we teach a lot about, the fact that fear and the unknown increases our tension, which then increases our perception of pain. And people need to know about that, because if they're not totally convinced as to how they want to do this, they need to know, they need a good solid education.
Yeah.
So and also a thing that I want to touch on today, and we'll be writing more about it in our blog, but it's not straight to an epidural. There are other things that you
Yeah.
can do before requesting medication. There are
Yeah.
other medications that you can try before. It does kind of depend on where you're at in your labor, but I always want people to just, you have to know your options. So you don't necessarily have to walk right in saying, "Hi, I'm here, like give me an epidural." Like there could be other options at the facility where you're choosing to give birth. They
Yeah.
may have things to offer you. There are always non-pharmaceutical comfort techniques, and we always
Yeah.
want to talk about that. And that's one thing that professional doulas are really skilled in.
Yeah.
And
And we're actually going to do a whole other video about that.
right, I just felt that it was a nice thing to cover the fact that we do support you no matter what your feelings are. And like, let's talk about it at first. A lot of what I do before I see someone in labor is talk to them about, like, so what are your, like, what is your experience with birth? Number one,
Yeah.
some people are like, I've never been to a birth. I have no idea what's ahead of me. I'm
Yeah.
really scared. I hear all these terrible stories. I
I've
just
only
want
seen it on TV.
to.
Like, yeah. And so, I mean, and I think that's huge is that like the images we get of birth, because it makes good TV or
Yeah,
interesting TV. I'm
right.
not sure good is the word I would use, but it makes interesting TV is that birth is like an emergency. It's this scary thing. Women are screaming and, you
Babies are
know,
pooping out of people.
like but it's like to those of us who've been in the room and who've been to births, like it's so different. It's so different and so much more complicated and beautiful and interesting and and powerful than that. So, and I mean, we could wax poetic about that all day, but like, let's talk about, we are going to do a video on non-medical comfort measures because I know that's something that people are really interested in. But for today, we wanted to talk about sort of those medical pain relief options. And so let's talk about like, what are some of those? So I mean, we'll talk about epidurals, but say you don't want to go straight to that epidural. What are some of your other options?
Right. And again, like I said, it kind of depends on the facility and what they have to offer. But something that a lot of people ask about or they're hearing about lately is nitrous.
Yeah.
And it's a gas, and it is, some people will call it laughing gas. I don't really, for those that opt for it, I don't really, they're not having like a jolly old time.
I imagine like the Joker from Batman when I hear that phrase for some reason, and it just makes me a little nervous, but it is.
Right. Um, so it's been used over in Europe a lot, and it's starting to be used more in birth over here. Again, before you opt for anything to be going into your body, you need to know the risks and the benefits. This isn't Liz and I saying, hey, all these other things are out there, get them.
Yeah, no.
We're saying they are there. They may be offered to you. People may discuss them and say, oh my God, I had the laughing gas, or I had nitrous during my labor and it was fantastic. Some people might say, I opted for, you know, a med called Nuvane, and it made me feel terrible, and I hated it, and don't use it. So you have to you before you're going to take anything, you really need to make sure that your care providers are explaining the risks and the benefits.
Yeah.
And if they can't really give you much information or direct you at least to a resource page, I would really reconsider doing it, because a lot of that stuff you can't undo once it's in you.
Yeah. I mean, but I think that is one of the things that people like about nitrous oxide, right? Is that it wears off very quickly. I mean,
It does.
you can't, it's there, but um it wears
Right,
off pretty quickly.
right. You can't just like turn it off. You do have to wait until your lungs blow it off, is what
Yeah.
we say. I have I have been with those that have opted for it, and it was such a wonderful option for them. And then others that have tried it and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't like this. Take it out of
Yeah.
the room, because they just, they don't like the way they feel on it. Some people describe it as like having maybe like a glass or two of wine.
Yeah.
And, so again, like it really depends, but your care providers, your nurses, your doctors, your midwives, they really need to be giving you the nitty gritty
Yeah.
before you say yes to anything. Epidurals they're commonplace, and people don't always know what they're getting into when they say yes to one. They sign a consent, they just want that pain relief, they are done, and they don't, people talk to me, after they've had one and didn't have a doula, or, someone to really explain things, and they'll say, I had no idea that I was going to end up with a catheter, or that
Yeah.
it put me at higher risk for a cesarean, or I couldn't eat. And some
Yeah.
places you can't drink. You're down to ice chips. And if you still have a long labor ahead of you, that's a long time to be without that. People will ask me, can I get a walking epidural and get out of bed? No. There, you can move around in bed. I have yet to be someplace where someone has an epidural and they are literally walking around.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a misnomer.
No.
I actually think it's really important to find this stuff out, because you don't necessarily, you do want to be having that discussion when you're in labor of like, if your care provider offers you something, you want to be like, okay, run down with me, why might I want to do this? Why might I not want to do this? But ideally, you're going to know your pain, if you think you may be using pain medication, you want to do that research before you go into labor, because hormonally, your brain is going to function differently in the immediate postpartum, during labor.
Right.
It's more difficult to take in information and process it the same way that you would, because you are more in that kind of primitive brain space. And that's not, like I just want to say, like, that's normal, that's healthy, that's where you need to be. It doesn't mean that you should be like patronized and patted on the head and, treated like a sweet little thing. Because ew, no, never. But but it does mean like it's a great idea to look into that ahead of time, which is why we're doing this. So, so you do have other options. So there's nitrous oxide, which we should try to post some links in the comments to like some
And
more
I
information about these.
really, really good things to share about it, just so that people really do
Great.
feel fully informed. Because again, folks think, oh, it's great. I just inhale a little, blow it off, like that's super, but it may not be right for everybody's bodies,
Yeah.
and it may affect them in the long run. So we want to just make sure that you have all that information so you can say, oh, I didn't know that. And there's research to back it. We're not just throwing
Yeah.
out mumbo
Yeah.
jumbo.
Like, yeah.
Um, So yes, we will definitely include some links here and in the blog so that you can make the choices
Yeah.
that are right.
And not all of these choices are going to be available anywhere, everywhere, you know. So not all facilities are using nitrous oxide these days. Not all, you know, like if you're at a freestanding birth center or a home birth, you're going to have different access. You're going to, I mean, if you're at a home birth, you don't really, pain meds are not really part of the discussion. Um, which I think is why a lot of people do home birth, honestly. But,
Like it's
um,
there, I don't have to, you know,
yeah.
one less thing
So,
to.
yeah. So, you know, I think it's important to just kind of ask your provider ahead of time, like, what are my options? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So another option is like an analgesic. So what what can you tell me about? I'm pretending I'm interviewing you. I'm pretending I don't know the answers to these things, but what can you tell me about an analgesic?
And it really, so it's a pain relief option, and most of these are, given through your IV. So, that also brings people to, some people opt to not have an IV
Yeah.
during their labor. And I'm talking hospital too. Usually people are really surprised when I say that. You can request to not have an IV while you're in labor or early labor. Sometimes they'll say, okay, well, we can hold off for a little bit. Typically, when you're in the hospital, they do want some sort of IV access. But I have seen people go their entire labors in a hospital without an IV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that pain relief option, some folks may, I don't see it used
A ton.
very,
Yeah.
I really
No.
don't, because we don't want the baby being affected, especially if it's towards birth actually
Yeah.
happening. They don't want to see a baby sleepy or really medicated. So I would honestly say what I see most are people opting for a little nitrous to get them through certain parts.
Yeah.
Um, and also, which the birther, you're controlling it, you're putting it up
Yeah.
to your face and inhaling it, and then you take it away. Like, I'm not giving it to you, or anybody else. You're controlling the medication. And I see epidurals really being
Yeah.
used. Um, as of lately, there really hasn't been anything else in between. I don't see morphine or really Nubane being used, or
Yeah.
any of. Um,
Can we just back up and talk about what we're talking about as an analgesic? Like what is it? Um, so when we say that, what we're really talking about is a med like morphine or Nubain, something that does affect your brain. And it's usually a narcotic, correct? And it does, you know, so it makes you feel a little loopy. Some people say that it really um, doesn't take away the pain, but it makes them not care. Some people say that it like kind of makes the contractions not feel quite as bad. Some people, you know, for some people it makes them confused and agitated. Some people don't like the way it makes them feel. So, and once it's in, you kind of have to like wait it out to see how it, you know, when it wears off, which is usually a couple hours. Um,
right. Those are, like I said, given IV. Again, like, we're not the care providers. We're there
yeah.
to provide all of that love and support, and direct you to the research out there
Yeah.
to help to 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 describe all that. So I try to not teeter on um, too much of the medical stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes what can happen is, if you opt for an epidural, they can give you what's called a bolus of medication. And sometimes that's a medication called fentanyl. And they anesthesia has to come in and kind of give like a syringe full in through the epidural, and then it goes into that epidural space and kind of gets those nerve endings to chill out, and you feel a little better. So sometimes people think, oh, I have an epidural, I'm going to be all set. Sometimes epidurals don't work. There
Yes.
are some folks out there that epidurals do not take with. Sometimes some folks have certain spine issues that may affect this. All of this needs to be discussed with the anesthesia before. Please make sure
Yeah.
they know everything about your medical history. If anybody is going to have to know everything about you, it's anesthesia.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you did have to go into the OR, they're the ones who are um, running the room really and controlling everything. So if you do opt for an epidural, you can get more medication. Sometimes you're given a little button and you can dose yourself with some more medication. It locks you
Mhm.
out. You can't overdose yourself. They will explain all of that to you. But
Yeah.
sometimes it just gives you a little extra. Um, Folks will say, well, as you're getting nearer towards actually giving birth, we want you to feel things a little bit more. We don't want you to be completely snowed down there, which means like, some folks, when they have an epidural, they can't even move their legs.
Yeah.
And it's a bizarre sensation to not be able
Yeah.
to
I
move.
I remember feeling like my chest was really heavy. Like I felt like I kind of couldn't breathe very well. Even though I could, it was just that my sensation was impaired. And it was like I got used to it and it was fine, but it was a really weird sensation. And so, with an epidural, just again to recap, because some people don't actually even know like what, they think it's like a medication that you get in your IV. So just to kind of recap, like what an epidural is, it's a catheter that usually stays in and they tape it to your back, but it goes into the epidural space around your spinal column, or around your spinal cord rather. And so the medication goes in there. It doesn't really travel through your system, which is one of the things that people tend to like about it, is that it doesn't affect how your brain feels. But often people are kind of numb-ish from the breastbone down to their toes. So just so you kind of have an idea, and some of the things that come with that, these are the things that people say, I wish someone had told me. So that's why we're telling you.
Yeah.
Um, if you opt for an epidural, and again, we say this not to scare you, but just so there are things that come with that because with any intervention, there are risks associated. And so we monitor to sort of mitigate those risks and keep you safe, you know, and by we, I mean your medical team, not me or Lindsay. Um, like, so, you will likely get a catheter because we like to keep that bladder empty during labor. But you're going to have a hard time getting up to go to the bathroom. So they usually put in a catheter. Um, what else comes with that? The blood pressure cuff
You
stays
get a
on
blood
you.
You get a blood pressure cuff.
Yeah.
You get oxygen monitor. You get it's called a O2 sat
Pulse on.
monitor of the finger. Sometimes, you know, it can go on your toe so that it's not in the way. You get an IV and you get lots of IV fluids. Usually they have to give you like a liter bag. That's the big bag of fluids before you even get to have the epidural, because epidurals can bottom out your blood pressure.
Yeah.
That's another thing you need to know. So they bolus you, they give you all these fluids to help your pressure stay up. So you get that too. You get the catheter, and there are two options with that. I have been at places where they have offered to help these clients use a bedpan, but usually when you have an epidural, it's really hard to feel
Yeah.
yourself going to the bathroom. So it's really, really difficult. But if that's how someone wants to start and see because they really don't want a catheter, like I'm all for it. Let's try that.
More options.
More options and more support and more listening and saying, okay, well, if you don't want a catheter, like let's do this. Um, so there's the Foley catheter, which stays inside your bladder with a little balloon that inflates with some saline. So that stays in and then it's taped to your leg and you're basically just peeing constantly. It just drains into the bag. Um, and it keeps your bladder empty. There's also this other option called a straight cath, and that's where they would catheterize you intermittently, usually every few hours. Um, pros and cons to both. We can delve into those later. If anybody has any questions, you can ask us. But again, you have to remember you're getting all those IV fluids, and that's constant. So once you have an epidural, it's not like they give you a bag of fluids and you're off. You're on fluids for the rest of the time. So
Yeah.
that means that your bladder is filling really fast. And also, if you can still be drinking by mouth, I'm encouraging you to do that. So there's a lot of fluids going in, and if you're being straight cathed every few hours, your bladder's really going to fill up, which can
Yeah.
sometimes work against a baby coming down past your bladder. So if that balloon is filled, it's hard to come past it. So again, pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
Um, oh, you're on the monitor for
Yeah.
the entire as as well. So in addition to the blood pressure cuff and the sat monitor on your finger, you're on their monitor. And again, these things they're not. I never want it to seem like the hospitals are trying to torture you or be mean.
Yeah.
It They're doing things because they want to watch over you. Yes,
Yeah.
there are mixed views about all of that and policies, and I get it. I get it, people. I know there's people that are going to be like, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that, you know, there, as long as there is a discussion and our clients feel that they are getting the best information and that they feel that it is right for them, that's who I support.
Yeah.
Um, but if someone is like, can we discuss this? It's always worth a discussion.
Yeah.
You do all of those added things with an epidural. You are in bed. We have
Mhm.
some options that we can work with. It doesn't mean you're laying on your back the entire
Yeah.
time. We try to make you feel as normal as possible and as human as possible,
Yeah.
but we are limited. So, I do recommend waiting as long as you can to get
Yeah.
one. And that differs for everybody.
Yeah. And it's like, I think sometimes there's this perception that, like, oh, once you get the epidural, like, you're good. You don't need any support. But the reality is, like, there's still a lot of work for your support person, whether it's your partner, your mom, your doula, whoever, there's still a lot of work for them to do. You are still going to need that emotional support. Questions are going to come up, and also the physical support is still there. Like we do a lot of like, okay, let's position. How do we keep your pelvis kind of open? How do we keep things progressing so that we're not running into additional interventions or complications? How do we facilitate this process? And then also really supporting you once you are through that thinning and opening phase of labor and into pushing, because sometimes with the epidural, sometimes you have a hard time feeling where to push and you need that support. So, and also once you get the epidural, sometimes that's like nap time for everyone, and that's great.
Oh,
Ideally,
absolutely, especially if it's been a really long
yeah.
labor up until then. And some people, I want to just make note about something. Um, you will talk to most people are either going to be rooting you on when they're talking about an epidural, or other people are going to be giving you the business for even considering it. The thing about opting for pain medications is that they're not always, you're not wimping out. You are not looking for a crutch. You you sometimes need to access additional tools in order to have your baby in a way that still leaves you feeling like you were in charge of your body and that you
Yes.
got the rest you needed. And sometimes people have to opt for a medication so that they can actually relax their body.
Yeah.
I have been with people who have gotten to 10 centimeters, which we look at 10 centimeters as it's this magic bullet of okay, well, you made it this far without
The finish
medications, like
line.
keep going. And sometimes the body is still not relaxed enough to actually get that baby out. And when care providers are talking about additional interventions, or interventions that really freak you out or you really, really want to avoid, sometimes considering an epidural gets you to keeps you out of a place you don't want to be and keeps you where you do want to be, so that you can have that vaginal birth that was your
Yeah.
goal. And I don't like it when people feel bad. It makes me sad
Yeah.
when people feel bad that they opted for an epidural. There is so much guilt and shame, and it's really bothersome because you don't need to be carrying that with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I try to remind everybody they are brave and courageous for saying yes to have something inserted into their back.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Like there sometimes is this perception that like, oh, you just took the easy way out. But like nobody in their daily life, like nobody in the world is like, ooh, sign me up for that needle in my back. That sounds great. Catheter? Awesome. Like
Uh,
you do it because it sounds better than what you're currently experiencing. And sometimes that's even after, even with this plan of this wholly unmedicated birth, sometimes things go pear-shaped in little ways, and you need, if your labor goes on and on and on for many hours, sometimes you may opt for that support. And there is nothing wrong with changing your plan. There's nothing wrong with sticking it out and sticking to your plan. That's great. We love that. And there's nothing wrong with changing your plan. There's nothing wrong with getting the help you need. That's like our whole thing, is like, let's stop telling women what to do with their bodies, and instead, let's help them make educated decisions so they can make the right decision for their body, the right decision for their baby and their labor. Like, let's just talk, let's have some real talk about like risks and benefits. Some of these can affect breastfeeding. Sometimes if
yep.
we see, after a really difficult birth or a birth where they've had an epidural, sometimes we see that it affects baby on the first couple of days of breastfeeding.
Yep.
That is not to say like, oh, then you should definitely never even think about that. But it's like, let's think about that. And then how do we then work with that? You know, Everything we do has repercussions everywhere,
Yep.
not just in labor, just everywhere. Actions
Right.
have repercussions. So some of those are great, some of those are not great. But I think that it's so important to be able to talk about those in a way that is not scary, in a way that's not judgmental. This is like my soapbox issue is like, like let's have some real conversations about these things so that we're taking away some of the fear, we're taking away some of the stigma, and not just dismissing people's feelings.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, right there. You've said it all. I've got
Just,
nothing. Oh, and I'm not kidding. I mean, we can talk about every subject that we do on Wednesdays
I know, for so
forever.
long.
But people got to get on with their days, and they know they can call us,
Yes.
and they know they can reach. Oh, and we love hearing from everybody. Oh, Angie, anytime. um, this is what we're all about. Um,
Yeah.
you know, we want everybody to have a birth experience that they are going to come away saying, I stuck to my plan and did it the way I wanted to, and then I want those that changed their plan to say, it's cool, I changed my plan, but I had so much great information, and
Yes.
I felt really confident in all my decisions, and everybody was so supportive, and it was wonderful.
And
And
I changed my plan.
um,
Someone didn't change
and
it for me. I changed it.
you know, I my plan, and it was great. Or sometimes you hear the stories of I didn't think I could do it, and it was right at the end, and everybody just encouraged me, and it just took a few more minutes for the baby to come out, and like I did it. That's super cool too.
Yeah.
And when you work with us from early on in your pregnancy, you're learning all of these things ahead of time. You're learning about the complementary therapies that help your body prepare for labor and birth. We're connecting you to those that are acupuncturists. We are connecting you to chiropractors. We want you to have an amazing experience that'll go the way that you're really hoping for, and that you really want. And also, we will connect you to people who will support you after your birth, no matter what your decision was. Liz and I scour the area for folks who are really going to be cool with you, no matter what
Yeah.
your choices were. We're not
Yeah.
going to direct you to anybody who's going to judge or shame you.
Yeah.
No,
And
but we're
so,
helping you get ready for that birth experience you want.
yes. So if you have like a complementary care practitioner that you loved during pregnancy or postpartum, um, go ahead and tag them on this post in the comments. Like we would love to know about them and kind of expand our network. We have a great network of providers that we work with, but we would love to know, who did you love in the, Cape Cod and South Shore especially, but um in
Yeah, oh,
general, who
Boston,
did you love that you worked with?
yeah, Boston area as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just good for us to know everybody, because sometimes folks who maybe aren't directly working with us will still have some questions and need some referrals, and that's what
Yeah.
we're here for. We still want to give that information out. So,
Yeah.
tag your favorite chiropractors or acupuncturists or anyone out there, that really helped you during your pregnancy.
Yeah.
And Liz and I are always happy to share the love
Oh
as
my
well,
gosh.
because
Yeah.
we love it when we see drop somewhere. So thank you to everybody who does that.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and today was a snippet of what we do and what we love to talk about. So we'll be writing more about it, and we'll post that on Monday with the video. And then next Wednesday, we are going to kind of do part two of birth, right? Or, yeah, I think we should just follow right up next week with non,
Let's do it.
pharmaceutical.
I
Yeah,
love
just to kind of stay, uh, just to stay right in the birth kind of arena. We're going to talk about comfort measures and techniques and things that you can do during labor that do not require medication.
Yes.
So that's really fun too. I love opening people's eyes about that.
Yes, so much. So yeah,
Yeah,
so I think let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you for
yeah. Wrap it.
watching. And if you want to work with us, if you want to just learn more about what we do, you can find us at risingtidewomen.com. We have a ton of info on there. You can find us obviously here on Facebook. Also on Instagram, our handle is at Rising Tide Women. So come hang out with us there. I tend to post, I do most of the Instagramming. I tend to post kind of behind the scenes pictures, pictures of my kids. Um, it's, you know, it's a little, I don't know, it's a different vibe, but I like it. It's fun.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so yeah, so come hang with us. We also have our free Facebook group that is for um, it's for our clients, but also just friends. You know, people who anyone who wants to join us, welcome. Where we really support each other in a really wonderful way around pregnancy, birth, parenting. So that is our Rising Tide Women Sisterhood. And you can find that on the sidebar on our Facebook page. Um, or I think there are links to it on the website as well. So come join our free
Yes.
community and just come hang with us.
Yay. Yeah, pretty fun. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye bye.